Hi guys, today I'm going to go through the changing of the front suspension struts and springs on a Renault Megane Cabrio. It uses a coil-over McPherson type strut, which is a combined shock absorber and spring. I'll show you that and just talk you through what's needed. Right, let's get the light in here. Okay, that's the strut. The shock's completely shot. And the springs are also snapped at the bottom, which you can't readily tell from here, but they are actually snapped. The bottom half of a coil or thereabouts is snapped off. So as you can see, it's quite oily from the suspension strut leaking. There are 2 bolts at the top. Normally you get 3. You get 3 studs protruding with nuts, whereas this has just got 2 bolts at the top. And there are 2 bolts at the bottom, big chunky ones that go through the top of the hub there. And this little plate which you need to undo just here, which carries the brake lines and the ABS sensor. The whole strut then lifts out, at which point you need to fit spring compressors to compress the spring and undo the top nut, which is where the fun begins. Okay, so it's the same both sides, so obviously I'm not going to show you the other side. I'm going to crack on with that and we'll come back hopefully once I've got the strut removed. So let's shine the light in here so you can actually see what's going on in here. Yeah, so basically what I've done, as I've described, 2 bolts at the bottom there, and you can see that's all loose and floppy now. There's a single bolt just up here which holds the brake line and the ABS sensor, which you can flip over to one side and get that out of the way. 2 bolts at the top, and then normally, just as a matter of interest, you would typically have 3 bolts, whereas this is actually just 2 bolt holes, and it's held on by a couple of tiny 13mm bolts, just there like so, which is kind of odd, but there you go. So yeah, at this point, okay, so wriggling this free, twisting the suspension strut around, and then just sort of feeding it out, which I'm going to go ahead and do now. And hopefully you'll be able to see this. There we go. One knackered suspension strut. So far so good. Now comes the fun bit. Have a quick check around here once you've dropped it, because this will be sitting on its bottom wishbone. What you want to do is make sure that it's not pulling on your brake line or fouling anything or doing anything basically that can cause damage. And also while you're under here, have a quick check of the underneath of the suspension mount, because these can be problematic and they can rot out. This one actually looks pretty solid, thankfully. Okay guys, we're back with the suspension strut off, as you saw me take off previously, and the coil spring compressors fitted. Now, your coil spring compressors will look something like this. These are actually quite antiquated. These are a pair that I borrowed, not having some of my own. The more modern ones you get, the draper ones tend to have a double claw, which gives you a bit more of a secure grip, but these are pretty sturdy, and as you can see, that's compressed the spring to a degree where it's loose inside the cradle, allowing you to undo this top nut in here. Now this is the hardest bit of it. What I'm going to have to do is wait until I can get hold of an impact wrench, because with the best of intentions I've tried all manner of ways of removing this. Now if you actually look inside here, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but what you have is a threaded bar with a bolt and a hex head, so you can fit an Allen key inside there, hold it still while you tighten and untighten the nut, and that's the theory at least. Unfortunately, in practice it's not so straightforward, and of course what happens is that shaft there rotates inside as you try and turn the nut, so you've got to hold that still. Now an impact wrench, what that will do is just whip that nut off quite quickly, because it has a hammer effect. So I would recommend, if you're doing this yourself, make sure that you can take both of the struts off, and if possible have a couple of sets of spring compressors, and and make sure you've got transport or you're close enough to a garage where you can take them and ask them to just whip that top nut off with an impact wrench if you have to. If you're lucky, plenty of penetrating fluid, an Allen key, and it's a 21mm socket, so you can actually use a spark plug socket, which is handy because it's got a hex head. You slot that over, use a spanner, a 24mm spanner on that, and then your Allen key down the middle. If you're lucky, you'll remove it that way. If not, you will need an impact wrench. For refitting, you won't need that. You can do it with an impact wrench, but you won't need one. And that's not going anywhere. So take a length of bar, which is hollow but sturdy. Scaffold pole is ideal. Slip it over, and there you go. You may need to do this 2 or 3 bites just to get things moving. And then, place that aside for possible future use. And away you go. So yeah, length scaffold pole or hollow square section steel, anything like that that will slip over a T-bar, makes a handy extension, and quite often all it is leverage. It's just a case of sometimes you need more force, and the easiest way to get more force is a longer lever. Okay guys, here's a quick update. This strut I've got apart by hand. It wasn't easy. Basically how I did this was I kept the top 2 bolts in with the spring under tension, and just cracked off the nut with an extension bar, just enough to get it going. As soon as it started spinning the strut, unbolted it, took it off, clamped up the spring, and then using, in this configuration you see there, using a 21mm spark plug spanner on the nut, which has a hex head, and an Aston super wrench, which is quite frankly anything but bloody super. So yes, it was undone using a 21mm spark plug spanner and a wrench on the hex head of that, an automatic adjustable thing there. You've probably seen those advertised, Aston super wrench, waste of money, don't bother. They do the job, but they're nowhere near as good as they claim. And a hex key in the middle, which was held by a length bar, as you see there, and then it's just a case of undoing that steadily and carefully until it pops off, stripping everything out, take the spring compressors off, and there you have one disassembled shock absorber. The shock unit, as you can see, has no damping whatsoever. That's utterly useless, and that's why the thing's been bouncing around like something not right. Down here you see a lovely shiny new strut and a lovely shiny new spring. Now you can see with the coil spring there, you can see where it broke off approximately about here on the other spring. You can see with the length of them, and almost a full sort of coil has snapped away down there. Now apparently this is quite a common problem with Meganes, so I've read on the internet, not being overly familiar with them, just recently having gotten this one. I couldn't say for certain, but there you go. So fortunately the parts are quite cheap. The shock absorbers were somewhere in the region of about £32 each, and the springs I think about £28 each or something like. So you know, it's certainly not going to break the bank to replace both units in one go. With hindsight, I could probably have done with a new bush for the top side of that, because it's split on this particular one. However, I'm not going to let that worry me. I'm just going to go ahead and put that back together, because that's just a damping bush. If it proves to be problematic, then at least I know how to strip it to replace it in the future. Okay, so it's a case of fitting the coil spring compressors to the new spring, fitting them up to the new unit, and then piece by piece fitting the components back on and bolting the top nut back on using exactly the same method as I did to unbolt it. And once that's done, this unit is ready to bolt straight back into the car. Just a quick comment, two things you can never ever have enough of in a workshop. Rags. Now what I do is old t-shirts, old socks, old shirts, old anything really. Anything that's too ratty to sort of donate to a charity shop or what have you. Cut them up into rags. It makes for cheap rags, and you'll be surprised how quickly they build up. Just throw them in a bag in the shed, and I've always got a supply to hand. The other thing, coffee. The bigger the mug, the better. And oh man, that's good. Okay guys, we're back with all the components cleaned up. First of all, we have a rubber bump stop, metal mounting plate and plastic concertina sleeve, kind of like a fork gaiter. This is going to fit over there and pull down over this sleeve there. So that actually moves up and down with the strut and just keeps all the crap out from there. The spring compressed, slots over there with the little pigtail going into the receiving slot at the bottom, as already mentioned. As you undo the spring compressors, you'll have to take note that these are actually seated in place on the top and bottom plate. So this bit goes over here like so, and the boot just pulls down. It's got sort of a moulding at the bottom, and it just kind of pulls down over the little thing there at the bottom, and that protects that. So your spring's in place. The next piece is this plate, which also has the little lump for the pigtail on the upper side that you can see. The next piece is this, which is a dust stroke grease seal, which sits here. The next piece is a chamfered piece of metal, which sits inside the dust seal like so, and in the top of this strut. Now what this does, the next piece here you'll see, I'm going to kind of sort of show you this with the bottom plate, is a plastic ball race, a plastic sleeve with ball bearings in. And this is a ball race which, oops, ball bearings escaping. That's the reason I'm trying to be careful showing you this. Now before this bit goes on, you're going to need a dab of grease, just around both parts of this, the inner and the outer part of this. Just keep things smooth. Now all this is for, don't get too hung up on this, because all this is actually for is for the small amount of turn, of rotation, when you turn your steering wheel, because the top plate, this bit here, that I'll get to in a second, remains fixed in position. The fork leg turns with the steering, the whole thing turns, and this little ball race here sits on the top and helps it all rotate. So this, I'll try and get all the ball bearings back in place. They actually pop into the top of these. This one's actually a bit mangled and worn, unfortunately, and as a result of that, it's making it kind of awkward. But as I don't have the option and the luxury of a replacement, this one will have to do. So that will sit in there like so. This sits on the top and effectively sandwiches these together, and that dust seal, I'll show you the whole thing upside down so you can see how that works. That keeps the crap out. On top of this then goes the top plate, which is a whole one-piece unit like so, and it slots on, and then the top nut goes into here like so. Once that's in, tighten that down as much as you can on the bench, and then I'll show you the tightening process. But before I go ahead and do that, I'm just going to show you the bearing assembly upside down so you can actually see how that looks and works. It makes it easier for you to put together. Get this nut off on the top plate. So put that inside there, lift this off, and I'm just going to put that in there and flip it. Now ordinarily, if this was in decent condition like the other ones, all those bits should remain inside the cage. It should just clip in and they should remain there and behave themselves. These aren't doing, but most of the bearings are there, and it's not like it has to spin at high speed or anything, so I'm not overly worried. So basically, I'm going to come a little closer to the camera. This is what it looks like upside down. So this is, you know, imagine that would normally be a perfect ring. That would then sit on top of there. So you can see how that rotates one inside the other. And then this, which is kind of like a dust seal on a motorbike fork leg, fits there. And when it's clamped down, that seals the whole unit, as you can see. Although it doesn't in this case, but you know, it would ordinarily. Right guys, okay, so that's the strut assembled, basically as I outlined. Once everything's on, get the nut on as tight as you can, but finger tight, and then with a ratchet until the central strut starts spinning, at which point you use the method I outlined with the removal, where you use a socket with something to grip it and turn it, and then a hex bar to either hold or to turn the strut in the middle. But either way, as long as you're tightening one against the other, they'll go on much more easily than they come off, which is a bonus. So there you go, shiny new strut, shiny new spring, and a nicely cleaned up boot and everything there, so that looks all good. Two 21mm bolts to tighten up, and somewhere up here, if I can camera up, there we go, are two 12mm, I think they are, bolts, and you can see this top strut nut inside there. Once that's done, the little cover that you see down there on the floor next to the hubcap, that goes back over to neaten things up. Obviously once that's all nice and tight, it's a case of putting the wheel back on, tightening everything up, dropping it down, giving it a couple of bounces to let everything settle, and then take it for a spin. So all that remains now is for me to do the same on the other side, tighten everything up. I hope you found this useful, and thanks for watching.